Most women spend their lives believing they must prove their worth to be chosen. Yet the rarest among them move through the world as though they are the choice itself. They do not clamor for attention. They do not bend themselves into the shape of someone else's desire. Their presence is not a plea, it is a command. This is not arrogance. It is not pride in the shallow, brittle sense. It is a knowing, a deep, immovable knowing that whispers, "I am enough." She is not loud in her power. The untrained eye might even miss her in a crowded room, yet something about her draws the gaze, slowly, inexorably, like the pull of a tide that you don't realize is moving you until you're already at its center. This is the gravity of a woman who has stopped chasing, and it is the very thing that makes her irresistible, not because she conforms to anyone's fantasy, but because she has mastered the art of belonging to herself. It begins in the invisible realm, long before the eyes meet, long before the lips speak. The air around her carries a certain stillness, the kind that only comes from having wrestled with her own shadow and refused to be ruled by it. She has seen the ways she once sought validation, like a beggar seeking crumbs. She has studied the cost of abandoning herself in the pursuit of love. And in this quiet, unrelenting self-examination, she has found the key: to stop running toward what is already hers by nature. A man may mistake her stillness for disinterest. He may think she has no hunger for connection, but that is his projection, the echo of his own unsteadiness. The truth is far more dangerous. She desires, yes, but she will not beg for what she can grant herself. And this refusal to submit to the economy of desperation disturbs the shallow and awakens the deep. In her, there is no frantic chasing of worth. She has abandoned the exhausting performance of perfection. She no longer sacrifices her truth to secure anyone's affection, because she has learned what few dare to, that a connection built on self-betrayal is nothing but a gilded cage. And so, she has chosen the open air. You may wonder, how does a woman become like this? She walks through fire, not the fire of romance, but the fire of solitude. She has sat with herself in the long hours when the world was silent and the mirror unforgiving. She has faced the ache of loneliness without numbing it away. She has felt the cold absence of validation and learned to breathe through it until it lost its power to choke her. This is shadow work, not the glamorous kind whispered in self-help slogans, but the raw, unfiltered descent into the parts of herself she once feared would make her unlovable. It is here she encountered the truth the Stoics knew well, that no one can grant her freedom except herself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." She took these words into her bones, not as philosophy alone, but as a way of living. And in doing so, she shattered the invisible chains that bound her to the whims of others. When you meet her gaze, it is steady, not challenging, not coy, just unwavering. She does not seek to dominate, yet she will not yield what is hers. This quiet authority is unsettling to those who mistake femininity for compliance. But she is not in rebellion against men or the world. She is simply in allegiance with herself, and that is a force more powerful than defiance. She has learned that those who are drawn to her will come closer, not because she pursues them, but because she holds her ground. She understands the paradox: what you chase runs, what you stand still for approaches. Her stillness is not passivity, it is strategy. It is the confidence of a queen who knows her throne does not need to move in order to influence the entire court. And yet, beneath this composure, there is depth. Her restraint is not born of coldness, but of discernment. She feels deeply, perhaps more deeply than most, but she does not allow her feelings to govern her choices. Like the Stoics, she has mastered the art of choosing her response. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." She lives this truth, and when she loves, it is not from a place of lack. It is not a frantic grasping at the beloved, fearing their absence will shatter her. No, her love is an offering, not a transaction. It is given freely because she is already whole without it. The world does not easily understand such a woman. She is accused of being aloof, intimidating, too much, or too little by turns. But these are the labels of those who have not yet freed themselves from the need to be understood by all. She does not wear these words as wounds. She lets them fall away, like rain against stone. For she knows, the moment she began to command rather than chase was the moment she reclaimed her life. And from that point on, she would never again confuse attention with affection or desire with devotion. There is a quiet revolution in the way she moves, unhurried, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Every step, every glance, every silence is owned. She has learned that the energy you bring into a space teaches others how to treat you. And so she brings an energy that is not hungry, but full. Not restless, but rooted. It was not always so. In the years before she became this still force, she too had chased. She had felt the frantic pulse of wanting someone to see her, to choose her, to confirm that she mattered. And each time she reached outward without anchoring inward first, she paid a price. Pieces of herself chipped away quietly until the mirror no longer showed a face she fully recognized. This is how most begin their journey. In pursuit of others, they lose themselves. But the turning point came when she realized that the pursuit itself was the theft, not of time, not of dignity alone, but of sovereignty. She remembered the moments after someone's approval faded, how quickly she returned to emptiness, and she began to understand. The problem was not the world's refusal to fill her, but her belief that it could. From this understanding came a kind of death, the death of the persona built to please, to be digestible, to be desired. This was the shedding of skin, painful, raw, liberating. She faced the shadow of herself that clung to validation, like oxygen, and she did not look away. In that encounter, she found a darker truth, that beneath the need to be chosen was the fear of being nothing, without someone's gaze upon her. It is a terrifying thing to strip away that illusion, but she did. And in doing so, she found what Jung called the self, the deep, unshakable core that is not the mask, not the role, but the source. It does not beg, it does not chase, it simply is. From then on, she understood the game differently. People are drawn not to those who cling, but to those who radiate. And radiance comes not from chasing light outside of you, but from tending the flame within. Her flame now burns steady, fueled by self-respect, guarded by boundaries. It does not flicker in the wind of someone else's opinion. When men approach her, they sense it even if they cannot name it. Something in her presence makes them slow their words, measure their actions. She does not reward empty gestures or half-hearted attention. She does not confuse charm with commitment. This is not cynicism, it is clarity. She knows what is real because she has learned to sit with herself, long enough to recognize authenticity when it stands before her. The Stoics would call this living in accordance with nature, not the nature of impulses and fleeting moods, but the deeper nature of reason and virtue. She has taken this to heart. Her worth is no longer at the mercy of the unpredictable tides of affection. She is anchored in her own values, her own moral compass. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." She has made this her law, and freedom, in her case, means the power to walk away. She does not cling to what dishonors her, no matter how alluring it may seem. She understands that what is truly hers will not require her to abandon herself to keep it. You too have felt the pull of this lesson, haven't you? The moment you stopped explaining yourself to someone who was never listening. The moment you withheld a reply, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. The moment you felt the intoxicating strength of choosing silence over scrambling for approval. That is the soil in which this kind of woman grows. Her command is not loud, yet it is absolute. She does not raise her voice to be heard. She speaks with such alignment that her words carry their own gravity. When she says no, it is a full sentence. When she says yes, it is because she means it, not because she fears losing someone's favor. Those around her soon learn. She is not swayed by spectacle. She is not conquered by status. She measures worth in depth, in consistency, in integrity. And when she finds it, she will match it. Not because she needs it to complete her, but because she chooses to share her completeness. And so, her relationships transform. The men who remain in her life are those unthreatened by her strength, who see her stillness not as absence, but as fullness. The friends she keeps are those who honor her boundaries, rather than test them. The life she builds is not frantic, not reactive, but deliberate, a life where she is both architect and guardian. She knows that the woman who commands does not control others. She does not bend them to her will. She simply governs herself so completely that others feel compelled to rise to meet her where she stands. Her power lies in the absence of desperation. It is a presence so complete that it becomes impossible to ignore, not because it demands attention, but because it refuses to compete for it. She has discovered the paradox. When you no longer chase, you are no longer chased away. There is something ancient in her demeanor, as if she carries the memory of generations of women who learned, through fire, through exile, through silence, that the world bends not to those who beg, but to those who endure. She wears this inheritance like an invisible crown, not to be flaunted, but to be lived. Each action, each choice, is a coronation. This is not a posture that can be faked for long. For a woman to truly inhabit this space, she must dissolve the hidden bargains she once made. If I give enough, I will be kept. If I am pleasing enough, I will not be left. These quiet contracts are written in fear, and fear always breaks under the weight of time. So, she tore them up, one by one, and in their place, wrote a single law. I will not betray myself for belonging. Her days now move to a rhythm untouched by the rush of others' timelines. She does not feel behind if she is not where someone else thinks she should be. She does not grasp for relationships to validate her worth, nor achievements to justify her existence. She knows what the Stoics taught, that the soul is its own kingdom, and the only throne worth guarding is the one within. Yet do not mistake her for a recluse. She walks in the world with openness, but not exposure. She can listen without absorbing, engage without surrendering. She offers her time, her laughter, her counsel, but always with the quiet reminder, sometimes to herself, sometimes to others, that her essence is not for sale. When attraction comes, it is met with a measured gaze. She does not leap toward the spark, fearing it will vanish. She studies it. She observes whether it burns steadily or consumes recklessly. She has no interest in being the fuel for someone else's fire. Her love, when she gives it, is not a rescue mission. It is not the mending of a man who has not mended himself. She understands that two whole beings can create something greater, but only if they stand without leaning on the other to stay upright. And here is where the modern world often misreads her. In an age addicted to instant access, her patience is mistaken for playing games, but she plays none. She simply knows that depth cannot be rushed, and anything that demands you abandon your pace to keep it was never meant for you. This steadiness is magnetic. It attracts those who are tired of the shallow dance of pursuit and retreat, who crave the gravity of someone who will not collapse into their orbit. But it also repels those addicted to chaos, those who require constant reassurance to soothe their inner emptiness. In this way, she does not just attract, she filters. Her very presence is a boundary. If you were to ask her how she came to this, she might not give you a straight answer, not because she is secretive, but because the transformation cannot be mapped neatly. It was not a single revelation, but a series of small refusals. Refusing to answer calls that drained her spirit, refusing to chase those who walked away, refusing to contort herself to avoid someone's discomfort. It was the discipline of letting go when her hands still ached to hold on. The philosophers would call this the cultivation of virtue. Modern psychology might call it secure attachment, but she does not name it. She lives it. Her compass is internal, and it points always towards self-respect. Even in conflict, she is unmoved in her core. She may feel anger, sadness, disappointment. She is not stone, but she does not let these emotions dictate her worth or her direction. She knows the mind can be trained, and she trains it daily, as a warrior trains with her sword. The battles are quieter now, but they are no less real. There is a moment when someone truly sees her, that they understand she cannot be won in the usual way. She cannot be dazzled into surrender, nor worn down into compliance. To be close to her is not a conquest, it is an invitation. And invitations can be declined if they are not honored. She lives by this truth. Connection should enhance, not consume. Love should expand, not diminish. And no matter how intoxicating a bond may feel, if it asks her to shrink, it will be left behind. This is why she commands, not through fear, but through clarity. And in a world so clouded by noise, clarity is irresistible. There is a rare serenity in her defiance, not the rebellion of one who fights against the world, but the sovereignty of one who no longer needs to. She has reached a place where her value is self-evident to her, and therefore does not require explanation to others. That knowledge is a fortress, and it is built stone by stone from the discipline of refusing to abandon herself. Her presence has the weight of inevitability. It does not ask for permission to exist, and yet it harmonizes with its surroundings. She moves like a river, not forcing its path, but carving it nonetheless. Those who stand before her feel a subtle shift within themselves, as though some forgotten standard has been quietly reawakened. They straighten their posture. They choose their words more carefully. Without trying, she elevates the atmosphere. She is not cruel. That is the mistake many make when they meet a woman who will not chase. They confuse boundaries with hostility, self-respect with arrogance. But her refusal to run after what drifts away is not an act of contempt. It is an act of truth. For she knows that what is truly aligned will remain without being pursued. In her eyes, you may glimpse the memory of storms she has endured. She has been underestimated, patronized, discarded, and yet she carries no bitterness, only discernment. She does not wish to punish anyone for the wounds they inflicted, but neither will she grant them the power to wound her again. This is the quiet resolve the Stoics revered, the ability to stand unbroken, not because life spared you, but because you learned to stand regardless. She no longer seeks to be chosen in the way the world romanticizes, plucked from the crowd as proof of her desirability. That version of being chosen is fragile, dependent on the tastes, moods, and whims of another. Instead, she chooses herself every day, without ceremony. She does not wait for recognition to feel valid. She knows her worth is not up for negotiation, because it does not live in the market of human approval. There is a discipline to this freedom. It requires vigilance against the subtle temptations to compromise, against the small surrenders that masquerade as love. It means watching her own thoughts for the creeping return of old patterns, the ones that once had her bending to fit into places she was never meant to occupy. Self-sovereignty is not a static achievement, it is a practice, and this practice changes how she loves. Her love is not a flood that overwhelms and drowns, but a tide that meets the shore again and again with constancy. It is given with both tenderness and boundaries, so that it nourishes without erasing her. Those who receive it understand quickly. She will meet you fully, but she will never meet you at the cost of abandoning herself. She has studied human nature long enough to know that many confuse intensity with depth, possession with intimacy. She has no interest in those illusions. The Stoics taught that attachment to what is outside our control is the root of suffering. She lives this truth in her relationships. She loves deeply, but without clinging. She holds openly, knowing that people, like seasons, may change. Her peace does not depend on their permanence. For those who enter her life, this is disarming. They may expect her to fight for their presence, to prove her loyalty through sacrifice. Instead, she offers them the greatest respect possible. She lets them be free, free to come, free to go, free to stay of their own will. And in that freedom, the ones who are truly aligned find themselves wanting to remain, not because they are bound, but because they are valued, without being owned. There are moments when she is alone, and the echo of old loneliness knocks at the door, but she no longer mistakes that echo for truth. She knows that solitude is not a void to be filled, but a garden to be tended. In those moments, she turns inward, not to withdraw from the world, but to remain rooted in herself. And so the old fear that without someone's love she is nothing has withered and died. Her life now is not built on constant seeking, but on steady becoming. She measures her days not by how many people she has impressed, but by how fully she has lived in alignment with her principles. This is why her command feels different from the hollow authority of those who rule by fear or manipulation. Her command is magnetic because it comes from within, not from a crown bestowed by others. And in this, she is untouchable, not in the sense that she cannot be reached, but in the sense that she cannot be reduced. No one can make her less than she is, because no one is holding the definition of her worth in their hands anymore. What makes her truly formidable is not that she resists being moved. It is that she moves only when it is right. She is not swayed by urgency born of someone else's fear. She does not leap at opportunities that glitter, but demand her silence, her smallness, or her self-erasure. She has learned to distinguish between the pull of desire and the call of alignment, and she will wait, patiently, unwaveringly, for the latter. This waiting is not idleness. While the world measures progress by constant motion, she measures it by refinement. Each day, she tends to the architecture of her mind, the discipline of her habits, the strength of her values. She knows that who she is becoming is the true currency she offers the world, not the approval she can secure, not the status she can display. And here lies the paradox of her presence. Those who would once have ignored her now lean in. The absence of pursuit creates a space that is both unsettling and inviting. It forces others to confront their own hunger, their own impatience. Some will try to draw her into their pace, to make her run where she prefers to walk. But she will not. She knows that running toward another is too often running away from herself. She has seen what happens to those who forget this. She has watched people contort their very souls to hold on to someone who was already halfway gone. She has heard the tremor in voices begging for love to return, and she remembers when that voice was her own. Those memories are her teachers. They remind her that nothing real can be secured through self-abandonment, only delayed loss. In her stillness, she mirrors the discipline of the Stoics. She lives as Epictetus advised, to distinguish between what is within her control and what is not, and to surrender the latter. People's choices, their staying or leaving, their praise or criticism, these are the winds. She is the mast. She may feel the sway, but she does not break. And because she no longer fears loss, she can offer herself without calculation. Love, friendship, connection, they are gifts, not investments expecting a return. If they are received with care, they grow. If they are not, she does not chase their replacement. She turns instead toward the constant work of her own becoming. This does not mean she is without passion. In fact, her passion runs deeper than most, but it is a fire she directs, not a blaze that consumes indiscriminately. When she chooses to give herself, her time, her body, her mind, it is because she has determined that the other is worthy, not because she is hoping they will make her worthy. This distinction is everything. Some will call her standards high, as if this is a flaw. But she understands that standards are not walls to keep others out. They are doors that only open for those who are prepared to enter, and to those who meet her there. She is not distant at all. She is fully present, devoted, generous. But she gives only from the overflow, never from depletion. And this way of being ripples outward. People who interact with her often find themselves thinking differently about their own boundaries, their own self-worth. She is not a preacher, but an embodiment. Her life speaks the lesson more eloquently than words, that you cannot command the respect you do not give yourself, and you cannot keep what you have chased in fear. There is something sacred about her refusal to rush. She understands that the deepest bonds, like the tallest trees, grow slowly. Roots take time to anchor before the branches can bear fruit, and she is not afraid of seasons without bloom because she knows the hidden work happening beneath the soil. Those who cannot wait will drift away. She does not grieve them, not because she feels nothing, but because she trusts the timing of what remains. Life to her is not a scramble for possession, but a curation of alignment. And in the rare moments when she does open her gates fully, when she lets someone into the citadel of her trust, they discover something unexpected. The warmth beneath the steel, the tenderness guarded, not by walls, but by discernment. To be loved by her is to be seen without flattery, held without possession, cherished without condition. This is her command. It is not domination, not coercion, but the quiet certainty that her life belongs to her first. Everything else is an addition, never the foundation. There comes a point in her journey where the discipline is no longer effort, it is nature. What once felt like resistance against old patterns has become the rhythm of her existence. She no longer asks herself whether she should chase or cling. The very thought has withered, replaced by an instinctive turning inward before reaching outward. She has become fluent in the language of her own soul, and in this fluency, she discovers a deeper truth. Command is not about control, but about direction. A river does not control the rain, but it decides where the water will flow. In the same way, she cannot dictate the choices of others, yet she governs the direction of her own life with precision. This is why those who meet her sense that she moves differently, not by impulse, but by intention. Her stillness is not stagnant. Beneath it runs an active current of self-refinement. She reads not to impress, but to expand. She learns not to keep pace with others, but to meet the measure of her own calling. Her solitude is not withdrawal, but cultivation. And every boundary she keeps is a quiet act of creation, ensuring her life remains a space where what is real can breathe. She is unafraid to disappoint. This is perhaps her most radical act. Where once she bent herself to avoid the sting of someone's disapproval, she now understands that disappointment is often the tax for living in truth. Those who demand constant agreement are not companions, but wardens. She has no interest in being anyone's prisoner. This does not mean she is unkind. In fact, her kindness runs deeper now, because it is not tangled in the need to be liked. She can tell the truth without cruelty, give without depletion, walk away without resentment. She knows that every no she speaks from self-respect is also a yes to the integrity of her own life. And the men who cross her path quickly realize that their usual strategies, grand gestures, charm without substance, dominance without depth, will find no purchase here. She cannot be seduced by performance. She will wait for the truth beneath it. And if it does not appear, she will simply step aside. This confounds those accustomed to conquest. Yet for the man who is steady in himself, her presence is not a challenge to overcome, but a harmony to join. She embodies what Jung described as the integration of the shadow, not by suppressing her desires, but by owning them fully. She is not ashamed of wanting, but she refuses to let wanting rule her. Her hunger does not make her desperate, it makes her discerning. She knows the difference between longing that calls her upward and longing that pulls her into loss. This discernment is magnetic. It is why she no longer fears solitude. It is never emptiness to her, but a sanctuary where her voice is the loudest one she hears. She has learned that when you no longer fear being alone, the world cannot use that fear against you. And so, she moves through life like a queen whose crown is unseen but undeniable. Not everyone will recognize it, but those who do will feel its weight without her ever having to name it. She commands not by standing above others, but by standing fully within herself. There is a certain mercy in her way of loving. She does not try to change those who are not ready to meet her. She does not chase them into readiness, nor does she shame them for where they are. She simply continues forward, knowing that each will arrive, or not, in their own time. In this way, her very presence frees others from the burden of pretending. Her relationships now are a reflection of her essence, steady, intentional, unforced. She does not mistake intensity for intimacy or constant contact for care. She seeks instead the quiet consistency that reveals itself only over time. She knows that trust, like strength, is built in repetitions, not in rushes. And in those rare connections where she is met as deeply as she meets, she is no longer afraid of being too much. She knows that to the right person, her depth is not a threat, but a home. Her life is not without loss. Loss is inevitable, but loss no longer dismantles her. When something or someone departs, she grieves without collapsing. She knows the leaving is not a verdict on her worth, but a shift in the landscape, and she trusts herself to navigate whatever terrain follows. She lives as the Stoics intended, rooted in what cannot be taken from her, untouched by the chaos of what can. And because of this, she walks with a quiet power that needs no witness to be real. There is a moment in her life when the lessons crystallize, not as lofty ideals, but as living marrow. It is when she realizes that every time she has stood in her truth, even trembling, the world has adjusted to her stance. And every time she has betrayed herself to keep someone close, the closeness dissolved anyway. From this point forward, the choice becomes simple, though not always easy. Truth over approval, alignment over attachment. Her days are marked by a new kind of wealth, not the accumulation of possessions or the gathering of admirers, but the abundance that comes from knowing she is never at the mercy of what can be taken away. The Greek Stoics spoke of autarkia, self-sufficiency, as the foundation of freedom. She has not just studied this principle. She has woven it into her bones. Now, when she enters a room, she carries the air of someone who has nothing to prove. Her confidence is not broadcast, it is simply felt. She is not in competition with other women, for she knows that comparison is the language of scarcity, and she lives in the dialect of enough. This absence of rivalry makes her both unpredictable and magnetic. She is uninterested in games, uninterested in hierarchy, interested only in truth. Men who encounter her feel the difference immediately. She listens without leaning forward, as if the outcome of their words will decide her fate. She meets their gaze with the calm of someone who can walk away at any moment, not as a threat, but as a fact. And this fact changes the entire dynamic. For once, connection must be earned, not extracted. This shift is not merely behavioral, it is spiritual. She no longer believes love is something to hunt for. She believes it is something to hold space for. And because she is no longer in pursuit, she becomes the kind of presence that draws pursuit naturally. The energy of someone who needs nothing is irresistible to those seeking something real. She has become a mirror in which others see themselves clearly. Some are drawn to this clarity, hungry for the reflection of their best self. Others turn away, unable to face what the mirror reveals. She does not alter the reflection to keep them close. She lets them choose, and in doing so, she keeps her integrity intact. When storms come, and they do, she stands as she always has, grounded. Her emotions are acknowledged, but not enthroned. She knows that feelings are weather, not climate. They will pass. Her worth is not tied to whether the sun shines again tomorrow. This detachment is not coldness, it is liberation. She is free to give without fearing depletion, free to receive without fearing loss. When love is present, she cherishes it. When it departs, she blesses it. Either way, she remains whole. She has also learned the art of silence, not as withdrawal, but as space. She understands that not every truth must be spoken to be real. Not every wound must be explained to be valid. There is strength in what is kept sacred, known only to her. Those who remain close to her know they are in rare company. They know they will never be begged for affection, but they will also never be taken for granted. Her loyalty, once earned, is steady, but it is never blind. If trust is broken beyond repair, she will leave without spectacle, without malice, without regret. She moves through life with a kind of elegance that is not about appearance, but about alignment. Even her no is graceful. Even her boundaries carry warmth. She is proof that strength and softness are not opposites, but allies. And slowly, those around her begin to understand. Her command is not the command of a ruler over subjects, but of a soul over itself. She governs her thoughts, her actions, her choices. She commands her own presence so fully that others feel steadier in her company. This is the final transformation of the woman who once chased. She no longer runs toward or away from anything. She simply stands, rooted, radiant, and lets life come to her.